What's up, guys? RuppDat here, welcoming you back to, well, content for my channel, first off, as well as draft format stuff for Pokemon, Sword and Shield content, the glorious return of my Columbus Swoo, and a bunch of other stuff. So this is my Week 1 game for the League of Extraordinary Trainers. I know it seems a bit odd that I'm kind of diving straight in with no prior warning, no draft analysis, no team builder, etc. I'm actually kind of a bit behind here, because we're actually near the end of Week 2 right now, so I'm basically just trying to get caught up on stuff. My full roster will be in the description below. As far as team builders go, I kind of figured I wouldn't do team builders for these, just because the League of Extraordinary Trainers, while very competitive, is not necessarily an upload required league like something else I'm in. If you guys saw my update video, I didn't say it at the time because it hadn't officially been announced yet, but I am in an upload required YouTube Wi-Fi league now. That'll be starting up here in a few weeks, so I'm very excited for that. This is kind of just me trying to get back into making content and testing the waters and seeing where things go. So I'm not going to do team builders. For at least the LET, that other league I will. But anyway, I'm stalling a bit. So my Week 1 game, I clashed with Sven and his Uppsala Umbreons. I forgot his team name for a moment there because he changed it from what it was when he first came into the league a few seasons ago. So the first thing you probably notice is that nothing on the screen is moving. This is a post-com. It kind of feels a bit odd that I'm trying to do a post-com for a battle that, well, Sword and Shield does not have a versus recorder, so I can't just watch the battle video back and then post-commentate over it. So I'm kind of stuck here doing it with the live video, kind of maybe sped up a little bit so it's not taking as long, and going from there. It's a bit odd, but the reason I'm doing it this way, at least for this game, all future content I'm intending to try to do live com for, is because, well, this battle came with a lot of problems, if I can kind of vent for a second. So the chess timer setup that LET is using, as well as pretty much every draft format league at this point, I had a bit of an issue with it for quite some time at the beginning. I had some problems connecting. I wouldn't stay connected. When I did connect, it was just a giant mess. I ultimately did actually discover the reason for this, and it actually pertains to another issue that I've kind of been discussing off and on whenever I have been doing YouTube stuff, whenever that has been. I will actually get to that in its own separate video, because I am planning on doing another update video at some point in the future, the very near future at least, where I'm kind of gonna go over my planned schedule for things, or at least what I want to try to do to keep things consistent around here again, as well as talk about some other things that have actually come to light since I first recorded that other update video back in mid-February. So, because we had a litany of issues and actually disconnected, Sven and I actually had to replay this game. So the first couple turns are actually going to be a recreation, and I'll note when we actually went live. That kind of caused a few issues in its own right, because we didn't exactly get a perfect recreation, but we got as close as we possibly could, given the circumstances. You also probably noticed that 2 of my Mons are missing items. So, even though I am a league captain and voted on this, somehow I completely forgot that starting with this season, the LET instituted a new item clause, where you cannot have more of 2 items on the same Pokemon. Now, given that I actually did participate in a league that operated under the strict item clause, which is the same one you usually see in VGC and most official Nintendo tournaments and whatnot, where you can only have 1 of every item, I should have actually been more prepared to be able to function under an item clause that gave a little more leeway than that did. But for some reason, when I built, it completely slipped my mind. So, in order to actually have a properly valid game, I agreed that when Sven and I were able to do our recreation, that I would pull 2 up. So I had 4 leftovers. So I agreed I would pull the leftovers from 2 of my Mons for the sake of fairness. I pulled them from Jellicent and Ferrothorn because they're the Mons I brought to this game that already have a form of recovery on them. Mudsdale and Rotom-H do not. So I figured that was probably the fairest way I could go about this, as messy as this whole thing already was. So, we are going to get into the battle now and see exactly how this all broke down, because this whole thing was just a colossal mess, and it did not go very well for several reasons. So let's go ahead and get this started, shall we? Alright, so here we go. Me and Sven are getting our battle underway, unfortunately. I mean, I know I'm saying unfortunately, but it's just because I know how messy this is about to get. So I lead Rotom-H as he leads with Necrozma. You have noticed I sped up the video a bit just to try to get through this a little quicker. I Will-O-Wisp on the first turn, and I end up missing as he sets up Stealth Rocks. And we're going to have a bit of a delay here for a moment, just because he and I were actually taking a moment to converse, because when we originally played, I did in fact burn his Necrozma with Will-O-Wisp, so we were discussing whether I should Willow again and he just Stealth Rocks or something. We ultimately decided that that wasn't going to be necessary, because while the Will-O-Wisp did chip down Necrozma a little more, we figured it wasn't enough damage to... Really, what I do in the next turn after this one is going to do more damage to this thing than the burn did in the original battle, period. So, ultimately, I decided to go ahead with how this battle originally played out, so this thing is not burned. I go ahead and defog the rocks away, as he proceeds to go ahead and fire off a Photon Geyser at my poor Rotom, which, it does roughly half, especially after Leftovers recovery. This is about right as far as how it went the original time around too. So, from here, I proceed to Volt Switch out. I will say that not burning this thing ultimately does not matter in this game, because, well, you'll see later. So I Volt Switch out. Again, in the original battle, there was a little more damage on Necrozma, but that's alright. So I proceed to go into Mudsdale at this point, as he's going to go ahead and set his rocks back up with Necrozma. Little irritating, but what can you do? Hazards are hazards. And he's going to go ahead and get some leftovers recovery. Mudsdale does not need its own yet. I go ahead and proceed to set my own rocks up. Sorry, I'm waiting a little bit. This is the thing of it using live comm, or not having a battle versus recorder video, I guess, to do this from. I have to wait for the in-between stuff as well. Even though we did go fairly fast when we played this because of the recreation for the first couple turns. Anyway, I got my rocks up as he proceeded to send Weezing in, and knowing I can't really touch this Weezing and not wanting to be burned, just in case it has Will-O-Wisp, I proceeded to send out Jellicent at this point, as his Weezing just goes for Sludge Bomb. Now, one thing I'm going to note real quick, when we did our original battle, at this point, my Jellicent did not get poisoned by the Sludge Bomb. That said, that poison is actually not going to be a factor at all. It is not going to change how this played out compared to the original battle. So he gets Weezing out of there and proceeds to go into his Duraludon, as I proceed to hit it with a Scald. Now, I get a burn on the Scald. In our original battle, I did not get that burn. And I'm pointing that out because that's going to make my next turn is going to make, what I do this next turn is going to make a lot more sense because of that. Since we're staying faithful to the recreation, I think we had a brief discussion about whether or not to proceed as planned or not. Because I actually burned this Duraludon a turn prematurely. In the original battle, I did not get the Skull burn, so I actually proceed to Will-O-Wisp and would have burned it on this turn as he hits me with a Dark Pulse. So that is the reason why I Will-O-Wisp, because that was what I did in the original battle, and this was the turn where I actually burned it, not the previous turn, because in the original battle, I got no Skull burn. So at this point, staying true to our original battle, he's going to go ahead and G-Max his Duraludon. I click Recover in a vain hope that somehow Jellicent survives and is able to recover, just like I did in the original battle. Ultimately, it is going to be irrelevant because this giant, towering, skyscraper dragon thing is going to proceed to fire off a Max Darkness and proceed to kill Pennybags, my Jellicent. In case you're curious, the nickname comes from, what is his name? Rich Uncle Pennybags from the Monopoly game. I mean, it kind of makes sense with the mustache, right? Anyway, I proceed to send in my Ferrothorn at this point. Again, it is without its leftovers, but that does not really make a difference as far as how this recreation played out, thankfully. Ferrothorn maybe had a little more damage on it at the end of it all, but ultimately it's not going to matter, thankfully. He's going to fire off another Max Darkness, which Ferrothorn's going to kind of take. My special defense is going to be lower, but I am going to proceed to Leech Seed this thing, which is nice because now I can get some recovery off. One thing I will point out that they did tell me after the game, this Duraludon is running an Assault Vest. He was very aware that when I came into this game, I was trying to exploit how somewhat frail on the special side Duraludon is. It is very bulky on the physical side, special side not so much. He was very much aware of that, so he brought an AV1 in preparation. He's going to go ahead and fire off another Max Darkness as I proceed to hit this thing with a Body Press. Do a good amount of damage to it, as Morningstar is going to recover out of the red. This thing is going to eat some burn damage, and his G-Max is going to wear off. I did not bring my G-Max to this game. I guess there's another thing I can get into quick, because I'm going to proceed to switch into Thermidor at this point. A couple of things I wanted to bring to this game, I did not, because I had some issues getting a few Gen 8 related things for this game. I'm not going to reveal those on the off chance that Sven and I actually play again down the line. So yeah, I did not bring my G-Max Grimmsnarl to this game, kind of for that reason. I was considering it. I ultimately talked myself out of it, not just because of the issues, but also because of, well, I ultimately figured the approach I did end up taking was going to give me a much better chance. So as you saw, I lost Rotom-H to a Dark Pulse. In our original battle, that did not happen. What actually happened is Rotom-H survived the Dark Pulse, missed an Overheat, and then died to the following Dark Pulse, where Duraludon would then die to the burn, which would have given a passive kill to Jellicent. However, this did not happen, so from this point we decided it was close enough, so this is where our battle proceeds to go completely live at this point. The recreation part is done. We got as close as we could, but damage variation just did not want to cooperate, and considering Sven lives in Europe, it was pretty late for him at this point, so we just wanted to get this done. So instead of Jellicent getting a passive burn kill, as had originally happened, I instead proceed to send out Toxicroak to simply score a kill with Drain Punch, just so Duraludon is out of the picture. So now we are live at this point. Toxicroak is just kind of bobbing around there while I'm waiting, as this... I probably could have sped this up a little more, but I didn't want it to go too fast, so that way I wasn't really fully keeping up with the battle, I guess. As I said, starting with the Week 2 video and planning going forward, unless circumstances happen that prevent me from doing so, I do plan on doing these live going forward, so hopefully this will not be an issue in the future. So he's going to send out Necrozma at this point, and I could have attacked him, but I think I end up reconsidering, just because I knew I was going to lose Toxicroak, and Toxicroak actually felt kind of important to me at this point, because it actually could still put in a lot of work against him if I played this correctly. So I believe what I end up doing here is... yeah, I think I was reconsidering for a moment, just because, yeah, I wanted to see exactly everything he had left at this point, and then ultimately decided I was just going to sack off Ferrothorn at this point, just so I could get a free switch into something that could handle Necrozma. So, considering he Photon Geysered, I don't believe... this is why I say I don't believe taking leftovers off Ferrothorn necessarily made any difference, just because it would have been... it would have been at fairly low health to begin with, and probably would not have been taking that Photon Geyser regardless. So both the mons I took leftovers off of are dead at this... to have this be a valid battle, are dead at this point. And I believe after a bit of thought, I end up sending Kyurem out to deal with the Necrozma, I believe. Or, no, never mind. Kyurem comes later. I send out Mudsdale, actually, because even though I have a feeling this Necrozma is more special leaning, I figure I can just go ahead, Earthquake, get some damage off, and just be in a good position to start chipping this thing down. So I proceed to click Earthquake. Gotta say, though, real quick, Well, I'll hold off on a sec till, I guess, the next turn where we're waiting for stuff to happen. He ends up going into Weezing, which, because of Levitate, means Mudsdale is not going to be touching it with Earthquake, which is kind of unfortunate. It is what it is. It gets Black Sludge Recovery. I'm going to get Leftovers Recovery at this point, which is going to kind of nullify the Rocks damage I came in on. And I believe, yeah, I'd just go straight for a Rock Slide at this point. As he's going to go ahead and Sludge Bomb me, which I resist. I get a Stamina boost, which is nice. And I proceed to go ahead and Rock Slide. I believe this Rock Slide Sludge Bomb back and forth kind of takes up the next couple turns, if I recall correctly, because even though Toxicroak could take a Sludge Bomb, I kind of didn't want it to take any unnecessary damage, and I didn't want to play the same risk with Kyurem, I believe. He does poison me on the second turn, but I do get another defense boost with Stamina, which at this point, I think my plan with Mudsdale was to keep this back and forth going for a bit until I reached the point where I had enough defense boost where I could potentially do some serious damage to this thing and actually chip it down with Body Press, which I believe I talked myself out of that plan at some point. We're going to go ahead and continue with this charade again for another turn. So I guess now's as good a time as it. Oh yeah, he set up Toxic Spikes this turn while I Rock Slided, which the spikes are a bit of annoying because Rotom-H was my defogger, and that is off the table now because of Duraludon. It would have been anyway had our original battle played out the way it intended, so fair enough. I'm at a loss there regardless. Gotta say though, I'm really liking how this is looking right now. Just watching the video back, just because I know I've done a rare few 1080p videos. This is the first one I've actually gotten to record with my new Elgato HD 60S. I know there's much better ones on the market now, but that's the one that I feel most comfortable with. So this is my first 60 FPS video, and it's looking pretty snazzy. Anyway, I finally grew tired of the Rock Slide Sludge Bomb parade, so I proceeded to switch Mudsdale out and went into Toxicroak. He actually called that and proceeded to hit me with a Flamethrower, which does not help because I am dry skin. I go ahead and set up a Swords Dance regardless with Toxicroak as he proceeds to Flamethrower me again. He gets the burn with the Flamethrower, which that kind of sucked because, granted, I wasn't KOing it with the Gunk Shot I'm about to fire off anyway, but I ended up doing much less damage because the burn basically nullifies the Swords Dance I just spent a turn setting up. But I am going to proceed to hit it with a Sludge Bomb regardless. And Toxicroak is going to go down to its own Life Orb recoil, as he knows this is going to happen, and proceeds to set up a second layer of T-Spikes. So I have basically been Heather stacked into oblivion at this point. Mudsdale and Kyurem are all I have left, and I believe this is the turn I end up sending Kyurem in, because I am desperately trying to somehow find a way to turn this game around, and my Scarf Kyurem feels like my best bet at this point. Yep, that's what happened. So, out's gonna come Kyurem, my old faithful Kyurem from LET seasons past. Takes rocks damage, gets toxicked by the Toxic Spike since there's 2 layers up. I basically go ahead and lock myself into Ice Beam because I feel it's my best move to be able to do damage to as many things as humanly possible at this point. He's gonna pull Weezing out and go into Necrozma, which... this is why I say the burning this thing like I did in the original battle ultimately is irrelevant, because I don't think that crit mattered, because when I calced it, I believe from that range Necrozma was 2-shot by Ice Beam anyway. But this is why I say not getting the burn ultimately didn't matter, because even though it would have put a bit more damage on it, Necrozma was 2-shot by Ice Beam regardless, so Cryogenic, the Kyurem, would have picked it off anyway. By the way, in case you're curious, I think Toxicroak's nickname of Froggy Kruger is one of my new favorite nicknames now. I think it's fairly obvious where the inspiration for that came from. I am very well aware that I misspelled the name Kruger, but I was trying to get it to fit because character limits, so it is what it is. So he sends out Clefable, and while I mull it over for a moment, I believe I do ultimately end up sending in... Yeah, I ultimately end up sending in Mudsdale. Had our original battle continued on without the disconnect, Mudsdale versus Clefable would have actually been where we were at to begin with, because once Duraludon and Rotom-H had their double down, we would have been in this scenario. And I now see that it would have played out horribly for me, even if that had been the scenario, because this is actually a more offensive Clefable. As you can see by the fact that that Moonblast did a huge chunk to a Mudsdale that actually had some special defense investment. He told me this thing actually had Grass Knot on it as well. So, obviously he's going to pick me off with Moonblast here. But even if we had been in the scenario where it was just full health Mudsdale versus full health Clefable, or relatively full health, as it would have been in our original game, I still would have been two-shot regardless, whether we went Moonblast or Grass Knot or whatever. So my only mon left is Kyurem. It's going to take rocks damage. It's not powerful enough to really kill Clefable from full health. I locked myself into ice. Yeah, I took a moment to look over his team before I realized, even though I'm not winning this, if I do somehow kill this thing, Ice Beam is my best bet to lock myself into because of Virizion. So I proceed to go ahead and do just that. I do almost half, and then Clefable's Ice Beam is going to take me out, and that's going to be the end of that. So yeah, I start the LET season off at 0-1 with a -4 differential. That was not pleasant in the slightest. That was ugly. But that is going to wrap this up. Thank God we are done with that. Thank you so very much for watching. I have been Ruppy/RuppDat, however you want to refer to me. And I'm going to be signing off for now. Let's hope week 2 goes a lot smoother for me. Shall we? Take care, guys.